Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, October 26th, 2017. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, we get into the Halloween spirit and head over to the UK to talk to homebrewer James Sandford about brewing with blood. James and his wife Lucy drew the creepy ingredient at a Will It Brew challenge at their local club, Manchester Homebrew. Did it make a tasty beer? Stay tuned. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, our DVDs, brewer's logbooks, and other Basic Brewing gear. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us and click on our associate link first on basicbrewing.com. It's on the right-hand side of the page there. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show. We greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own Magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com, and we're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. And if you do us the favor of rating us on iTunes and maybe leaving a nice comment, that'll help new listeners find us, they say. And if you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our virtual guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. I want to start off the show with a sad note this week. Our friends over at High Gravity in Tulsa have lost their mascot, their friend, and their family member, Pippin the Parrot. If you've visited highgravity.com, you've seen Pippin prominently displayed on the High Gravity logo. And if you visit Pippin's tap room, there is a giant image of him up on the wall. And if you've been to the store, you could have met Pippin yourself because he stayed in a big cage up in front of the store. Well, Pippin fell ill a couple weeks ago, and he unfortunately passed away a couple days ago. And I know that Desiree and Dave and the rest of the folks at High Gravity are going through a really tough time right now. When you get a pet, if you do it right, you fall in love, and it's sort of like attaching a little time bomb to your heart. And I believe Pippin was only 24, which was young for a parrot, gone way too soon. So our thoughts are going out to our good friends at High Gravity in Tulsa. Let's take a quick look into the mailbag. I've been talking lately about the technique of boiling extract beers for only 15 minutes to get some really quick and delicious brews. I got a letter from Ian, who uses a similar technique with all grain beers. Ian says, I'm in the UK, and I've been listening to your podcast for over 10 years, but have not got in touch before. I thought I would now, as you've talked recently about quick brewing. Ian says, like many people, I've got less time to brew now that I've had kids, so I've tried to develop a quick way of brewing all grain recipes. I always use the brew-in-a-bag method, and now do it in a 3-gallon pot on the stovetop. I use a 30-minute mash in the oven and then a 15-minute boil. I ferment in a plastic bucket, and I seal the bucket with the hot wort in it and let it cool overnight and pitch the next day. I'm not bothered about numbers, just that I end up with a beer of that style that I'm aiming for. I've tried this 3 times with different beer styles and had a great result each time. It's taken me 2.5 hours or less from getting equipment out to cleaning up, and that means I can brew in an evening or whenever I can grab some time. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Thanks, Ian. I just love stories of homebrewers brewing good beer while breaking the traditional rules. I'd love to see your recipes of what you've been doing, Ian. Halloween is next week, and we'll be celebrating a little early this Friday when I release our annual Halloween episode of Basic Brewing Video. This year, Steve and I taste my Count Chocula Milk Stout that I brewed with an entire family-sized box of Count Chocula cereal. It actually turned out to be a good beer. In fact, we had a little gathering of friends to carve pumpkins this past weekend here at the house, and the milk stout was a hit. In fact, one of our friends who brought a 6-pack of commercial cider to the party said she's not a beer person usually, but that we might have turned her into one with that beer. So don't give up on your non-beer loving friends. You just got to find the right beer. And this time it was a beer made with Monster cereal. So look at that, or look for that episode on Friday. At that gathering, I also served my 15-minute Saison, which will be on an upcoming video episode. My room temperature Pilsner, which will be in on an episode here in a couple weeks. And a Session American Hop Stand Pale Ale that weighed in at only 3.8% ABV. I went out on a limb. We do this little thing every year, and usually I buy some commercial beers to go along with the homebrew. But this year I didn't buy any commercial beer. I kind of felt like, if you go to a brew pub that also sells, other people's beers, what is that? What are you saying about yourself if you're if you're that publican? It went well, though. Everybody seemed happy with my beers, or at least they were polite if they didn't like them. But they drank them anyway, so, the best part of brewing is sharing the final product with folks. Now, a few weeks ago, I was alerted on Twitter about James and Lucy's Blood beer. Now, of course, I thought it would be a great Halloween topic. Now, if you're squeamish and don't find the idea of a beer with blood appealing, stay with us anyway, because the approach that James and Lucy took in experimenting with the ingredient ahead of brewing with it, and their approach of formulating the recipe and blending it in, the thought process that they went through, I think is really informative, and you might get some inspiration for a technique that you might use on an ingredient that you do find appealing in the future. Plus, it was just a fun conversation. James Sandford, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hi.
Now, you brewed with a very interesting ingredient, and I want to get into that. But first, I like to talk to brewers about their backgrounds before we get to talking. And you apparently haven't been brewing for very long.
Yeah, I mean, I only started brewing Christmas just gone. My wife has been making wine for quite a few years now, and she said that the one time she tried to brew beer, the only thing it was good for was cleaning the drains out. But I'd always had a bit of an interest in it because we've got Robinson's Brewery in Stockport, where I'm from in the UK. And I'd been around their brewery tour once or twice, which is fascinating. They've got the historic equipment on one side, and they've got the modern German shiny stainless steel equipment on the other side, so they can give you both perspectives. And all this equipment that is doing something really simple, but at the same time it can have a lot of technology behind it if you want to, really appealed to me. I work in technology for a living, so putting these things together, prototyping, improving, and then also the making nice drinks, nice beer. I like cooking. It works really well. So.
And when you're not brewing with weird ingredients that people force upon you, what do you like to brew?
Well, we mainly brew Belgians at the moment. I found Sachs West Fletcher 12 clone online quite a while ago, and myself and my wife wanted to have a go at that, so we ordered some syrups from America. I think it's Candy Syrup Inc. They've pretty much thrown everybody else out of the market, even in Europe, for candy syrups, Belgian candy syrups. So we had to order quite a large batch over from America. So we've always got a Belgian on the go at the moment, or something along those lines. We've got a Russian Imperial Stout in the fridge downstairs at the moment, so hopefully ready for Christmas.
That sounds tasty. Now, you talk about your homebrew club. You're a member of Manchester Homebrew. And you got into this, into brewing with blood through a competition. So talk about the Homebrew Club, first of all, and then talk about this event that you got to be a part of.
Yeah, so we meet once a month, and there's a whole range of skills go along. There's myself and my wife, who are relative newcomers, people still brewing with can and kilo kits, and we've got one or two professional brewers go there quite regularly. And it's a nice, friendly atmosphere where sort of everyone can bring anything that they've made, whether it's gone really well, whether it's gone badly, and gets really good feedback, both whether it's something people would want to drink and if there's something wrong with it, how they could improve it. And a couple of months back, Rich from the group, he said we should really do one of these Will It Brew challenges. And everybody brought in an ingredient that was slightly weird. The only rule was that it couldn't be poisonous to humans or yeast.
It's a good rule.
I think we took breakfast bars in, so Nutri-Grain bars with the strawberry jam in the middle of them and the sort of oats out around the outside. And other people brought some less weird ingredients in. Someone brought treacle in, which I've seen brewed with a couple of times. Someone brought hay in, which I can see that as being brewable. And then Rich himself brought blood in, dried blood. It's not got through any nefarious means. He in the UK we have black pudding, which is a blood sausage. It's made with dried pig's blood, suet, and lots of oats and that sort of thing. And we have it with fried breakfasts on a Sunday. And so it's relatively easy to get hold of. Comes in a bag and it's sort of this dark, reddy, purpley colour. And if you dip your finger in the powder and touch it to your tongue, it doesn't really taste of a whole lot. It's sort of metallic, but yeah, there's no distinct taste to it. It's, yeah.
Yeah, in my experience of tasting my own blood, from childhood accidents and such, metallic, would be something iron, iron-like, comes to mind.
Yeah, I was expecting something a bit more, maybe slightly salty as well, but yes, it was literally metallic, maybe like licking the dust off of a workshop or something like that. It was just didn't taste of a whole lot.
So dried pig's blood.
Yeah.
I don't think that I've ever seen that in a grocery store over here in the United States. But different strokes for different folks, I guess I say.
Yeah, I mean, even in the UK, you won't see it in the supermarkets. I think you can get it from some butchers. I think Richard got his bags off of the internet. So, of course, you can get anything off of the internet, and I think this just goes to show that.
So you draw this ingredient, this dried pig's blood. What goes through your mind first of all? I mean, what styles pop into your head? Yeah,
well, so first of all, it's sort of, can you actually brew with this? And there was some murmurings in the homebrew meetup that people had seen things online about people brewing with blood, and but no specifics. And myself and Lucy were talking to each other when we drew this out of the hat, and we were thinking, we want something that is relatively plain so that we can actually taste what of a difference the blood makes to the beer. If we're going to be trying to brew with this new ingredient, we want to know what the ingredient tastes like. And we thought we want something that can stand up against this quite powerful tasting thing. We presumed it would be quite powerfully tasting. So we thought maybe a porter, maybe something dark porter, and we thought maybe a smoked porter, because the worst thing that can happen if we use a smoked porter and we add pig products to it is we get something that tastes a bit like smoked sausage or something like that.
I've actually had bacon beer before, which was actually pretty tasty. Now, if it were me, I tend to dive headlong into these things, and so I'm afraid that I would have just dumped the blood into the kettle and gone on with it. But you took a more scientific, cautious approach.
Yeah, I mean, blood's it's got quite a high metallic content to it, and I didn't know whether it was going to. Well, I presumed it would make the water slightly more acidic, but I didn't know how it was going to actually impact the yeast. So I wanted to do a bit of a test first. I've got a few conical flasks, my flasks downstairs, and we wanted to do a bit of a forced ferment test with the blood just to see if there was anything fermentable in the blood itself, because it carries all the nutrients around the body. There might be something in it. And also whether it would just kill the yeast and make the yeast unviable. So I went through the usual forced ferment procedures. Well, the procedures that you would go through for making a yeast starter of adding my ingredient, in this case dried blood, to water, and placing it on the hob and boiling it up to kill off any of the nasties in the blood, so that I could then chill it down and add the yeast. And that was a bad idea. I don't know if you've ever boiled blood before, but it forms a clot, a really big clot. And it's weird. It's sort of spongy, foamy, and it just, that was a bad idea. So I poured a little liquid that hadn't formed into the clot into a glass, and I had a little sip of that, and it's awful. It's really awful. I don't know if you've smelled blood in large quantities before, but it's a really pungent smell. And while it isn't necessarily a bad smell, there's just something that makes you want to gag. It's like if there's a lot of blood somewhere, something has gone pretty wrong.
Now I have to say that I used to work for a very large meat company, and so I've been through several different chicken kill operations, and one cattle beef operation, and of course there are a whole lot of other smells going on in the same at the same time. So I can kind of see where you're coming from.
It's and to sort of kick me while I was down, when I tried to pour this big clot out of my flask and clean it out with the tap, it really stuck on there. There was dried blood all over the glass, and no amount of scrubbing was getting that off. But we ended up sort of looking at what we had under the kitchen sink, and we had some stain remover for clothes, and we thought that's made for getting blood out of things. We'll give that a try, and it did really, really well. It softened it up. It oddly turned the blood sort of a yellowy see-through colour, which stands to reason looking at it now, because if you can't get the bits that are really deep in the fibres out, you just want to make it so that you can't see it. So, yeah. Sure.
Now, I just imagine, we have all these, detective shows and investigative police shows and things like that over here. I'm sure you do too. But I can't imagine someone coming into your kitchen with a black light now and looking all around.
Yeah, I mean, you get used to keeping everything in the conical flask, really, because I mean, I'm sure you know as a brewer yourself that if you turn your back away from it for one moment, it's going to boil over, and once you've got that sticky wort all over your hob, you've got a really long day's cleaning ahead of you. Oh, so it's just keep a close eye on it, and you'll be fine. At least in theory.
So that test didn't go so well. How did you proceed after that?
So we looked at what happened when we did the test, and it formed this big clump in the middle of the water, and we thought we've seen something like that before, and we were thinking, and it reminded us a bit of corn flour. If you add corn flour to gravy, if you just add the powder into the gravy, it clumps together, and you can't whisk it out. It's just in a big mess. So we thought maybe if we treat it a bit like corn flour, we could add the dried blood to cold water and dilute it down, shake it up thoroughly, and then add it slowly while stirring to the boil pot. And that would allow us to sanitize the blood, and it would also allow us to get the blood into the beer without it all lumping together and just getting stuck in the boil pot. And that worked. It worked pretty well. The other thing was we wanted to be able to split the batch so that we could have the base beer and then 2 different concentrations of blood in there, just so that we could see what effect the blood was having on the flavour. So I'm sure you can appreciate that there was no other option than for me to buy myself a plate chiller, something that I've been wanting for quite a while. And luckily, Lucy agreed. So we bought this plate chiller so that we could go straight from the boil pot to the fermenter and get it to room temperature that way. So we pulled off the base beer, added some blood, pulled off the low concentration of blood, added more blood to the boil pot and pulled that off into the final fermenter, and it worked really well. Luckily, it didn't all clog my nice new shiny plate chiller.
That would have been my fear, that it would have just clotted up inside there, and then then there you go. Yeah,
though I think if it was going to clot, I think it was going to clot when we poured it into the boil pot, because it's that heat that I think causes it to clump together.
Of course, you get a cold break, a protein break, when you chill
you do,
wort as well. So, but luckily you didn't have to face that. So
luckily.
So these were small batches. I'm taking it.
Yep. So we had, I think it was about 11 litres of the base beer and about 4.5 litres each of the different concentrations of blood beer. So I don't know what that's in imperial.
Well, usually I get email when I talk about imperial measurements and I don't go into metric. So I'm just going to let the other side email now. They can it's equal time.
we have it even worse over here in the UK, because a gallon in the UK is different to a US gallon. So whenever you look a recipe up online, you have to be a bit detective if you're from the UK.
This is a bit of a bunny trail, but I had to buy some chicken stock or some beef stock the other day in the store, and the little box of liquid was actually weighed in dry weight, so it was like 40. It was 48 ounces, and so then I had to have 3 quarts of this stock for my soup recipe. So this store clerk came over and we had this discussion. And we both confused each other because I was talking about, I said, now this weighs, 48 ounces. And she said, well, but how many ounces are in a cup? And I said, but that's a different ounce. That's the.
Yeah, but if you want something along those lines with the blood, I actually I wanted to know what the dry what the dry volume of the blood matched up to weight of blood was, and it turns out that 25 grams of dried blood is about 50 mils in volume.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there you go.
Everybody make a note. So talk about your recipe. What was the base recipe like?
It was based on a beer listed as Loon Lake Smoked Porter on Homebrew Talk by Beer Muncher, and just adapted for what I could get my hands on. So I had 5 pounds of smoked malt there, 3 pounds of Munich, a pound of Carapils, 3/4 of a pound of 60 Loverbond Crystal, and 3/4 of a pound of chocolate. And then hops, we had half an ounce of Northern Brewer and 3/4 of an ounce of Willamette.
See, now you went back into to the non-metric stuff. So now you're going to get everybody mad at you.
Well, I've got those weights and measurements written down, so it's a lot easier.
So how much blood did you? So you did one batch with no blood, and then how much blood in each of the sequential batches?
So we after we did the test with the blood, we sort of had an idea of how potent the flavour and the smell of the blood was. And we made the decision that we'd do 60 to 1 by volume and 120 to 1 by volume as our ratios of beer to blood. And yeah, because we didn't want it to be too overpowering that it was sickly. We wanted the beer to be enjoyable, but we wanted you to be able to taste it.
How did the yeast like the blood? Did you see a difference between the performance of the yeast between the 3 containers?
No, it was absolutely fine. I mean, there was maybe a little bit more trub at the bottom of the blood beers. But I'm not sure if that was some of the blood dropping out or if it was because I made a yeast starter for this and I made one yeast starter for all 3 versions of the beer and just split it by eye. So it could have just been that I put a bit more yeast in some of the beers than the others. And but they all fermented down to the same final gravity. And yeah, they took about the same amount of time. It seemed absolutely fine with it.
And so what was the appearance of the beers? What they look like?
So they were all pretty much the same. Maybe the blood beers were slightly more cloudy than the base beer, but they all had sort of quite a nice dark porter-like colour to it, I guess.
So did the boil change the color of the wort or the color of the beer? I'm asking because my friend Steve and I made a beer that we called Melon Blood, that where we used all of the brewing liquid for the beer was the juice of watermelons. So it was red. At the beginning of the boil, the wort was really red, but after the boil and certainly after fermentation, that red color faded quite a bit. Did you see the same thing or something similar?
Not particularly. So the blood went in right at the end of the boil after flame out. So it didn't have a chance to. The heat didn't have a chance to properly affect the colour of the blood itself. And the recipe is quite a dark porter anyway. So if there was a difference other than the slight cloudiness, you couldn't really tell. We handed the beer out to people at the Homebrew meetup when we all came back with our creations. And everybody said that if you didn't know there was blood in there, if you hadn't been told there was blood in there, you wouldn't know. It didn't look like there was blood in there. It didn't particularly smell like there was anything in there. Yeah, I guess that brings us on to actually what it tasted like. So it was interesting. We thought that you would get a bit of a metallic tang to it, maybe a bit of a meaty taste to the beer with the more blood in it. And we didn't find that. When we first opened the beers, we found that the only effect that it had on the taste and smell of the beer was the more blood you put in, the less smoky the beer tasted and smelt, which was really weird. I didn't expect that at all. And we opened another couple of bottles a couple of weeks after the homebrew meetup, and it had changed again. So again, it was the more blood was there, the less smoky this smoked porter tasted. But there was a little bit more going on there. So I didn't use water additions for this beer, and the water in our area is better suited for pale beers. So we found there was a slight tartness to the base beer, but the blood seemed to get rid of that tartness. So it actually made the beer a little bit more balanced. It was really interesting.
So it was sort of like a mineral addition.
Yeah, I guess so. It was really odd. I didn't expect any of this.
That's the fun of experimentation, the surprises. So would you use it again? I mean, was there anything, did it bring anything positive to the beer that couldn't be mimicked by another ingredient?
I don't know. So like I say, it had this effect of dampening down the tartness because of me not using water additions. And if I wanted to have the same effect, I could just use water additions. And it has this effect of dampening down the smoky flavour of this smoked porter. I could just use less smoked malts. So I don't think there was any flavour in particular that I could identify that the blood itself added. It seemed to take away certain aspects of the beer. And everything that the blood did to the beer, you could do by just modifying the recipe in other ways. So it's more a case of, it's not, should you be brewing with blood? It's not like this is the new isinglass or anything like that. It's not this miracle ingredient that makes your beer taste better or different in any big standout way. But it doesn't make it taste bad. So I guess if you were a small brewer and you wanted something for Halloween that you could put on the bar where people are going to say, has that really got blood in it? You can absolutely brew with blood, and you can absolutely say yes.
So in a way, it's kind of a mixed bag as far as the results, because it did make a drinkable beer, it sounds like. But on the other end, the ingredient, the mystery ingredient, didn't bring anything special to the table. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, and I've got friends who are vegetarian and vegan as well, and they can't enjoy this beer, or they can enjoy the base beer, but they can't enjoy the blood beer.
And I would imagine it wouldn't be kosher as well, being a pork product.
Yeah, so that said, my wife's granddad is a very bad Jew. He's got bacon in his freezer.
I'm an American. I've got bacon in my veins. So
his wife used to hide it when the rabbi was visiting.
The lure of bacon. Of course, now you guys call our kind of what we call bacon. You call streaky bacon, don't you? Or there is a difference?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, your bacon it's got a lot more fat to it. So I think your streaky bacon tends to have about 50% fat and 50% meat, I guess, or thereabouts. And we have back bacon, which is off the leg, I think. I might be wrong there. There's a lot more meat to it though, and it tends to be thicker as well. So yeah, you can get the fat on our bacon to go very crispy while keeping the meat nice and moist, which is pretty good.
Maybe that's the next ingredient that you should tackle.
People make Bloody Marys with bacon in.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a big trend over here where people put, like a whole fried chicken on top of a Bloody Mary and things like that, and hamburgers and, just ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, and I guess you've heard of the infamous cock ale.
I have.
Yeah, so Steve, who's in our homebrew group, he runs a microbrewery, and he did an event over the weekend a week or two ago called Weird Is My Happy Place. And he brewed a recreation of a cock ale recipe from the 1600s that had lots of spices in it. The beer was quite nice. Apparently the chicken itself tasted fantastic when he put it on bread and had a butty afterwards. And then he also made a recreation of Mercer's meat stout, which used to use caramelized beef carcass, but he used Bovril as a substitute.
And Bovril is a drink, right? Kind of a meat drink.
It's a meat extract. Yeah, it's you can buy it. You buy it in a jar, a bit like Marmite. Actually, you don't have Marmite either, do you? You buy it in a small jar, and it's a paste, and you can either spread it on your toast, or you can mix it into your gravy instead of extra stock. But yeah, people put it in hot water and drink it.
And Marmite, is that a yeast product?
Yeast extract. Yeah, yeast extract. Vegemite is a similar thing over in Australia. It's really salty. If you ever get the pleasure of trying it, don't fall into the hole that a lot of people do, where you put loads on your toast. less is more.
I have tried Vegemite when I was in college, and to me it smelled a lot like catfish bait, which you probably don't have over there. But yeah, very, very strong smelling stuff.
Yeah, I've got a recipe for it somewhere that I've been meaning to try, but it takes several days and you need a lot of yeast. So if I'm doing a big beer, I might keep the yeast cake afterwards and have a bash at making my own Marmite.
Yeah, there you go. We pour a lot of yeast down the drain. So yeah, why not put it to work in another dish? Well, this has been fun. I don't know that anybody will be inspired to try to to brew with blood, but I like your approach, and I like your methodology of going about experimenting with the ingredient before you actually brewed with it, and actually taking like I said before, kind of a cautious, more scientific approach. So other than just the novelty of talking about brewing with blood around Halloween. I appreciate your taking the time to walk us through the steps.
Thank you very much. And, I've done it now, so you don't have to.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much for having me on. Take care.
Well, thanks again to James. I'll post a link to the article that James wrote up on the Manchester Homebrew site describing the experiment. I'll post that link in the description of this episode on basicbrewingradio.com. And for those who have kids listening, I just want some extra credit for my behavior during the discussion of the chicken beer. I could have... There are lots of things I could have said, but I was a good boy. Just saying. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say hey, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. You get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all that out at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Featured products this week that were purchased through the link are laser pointer for cats. I actually need one of those. A while back, I had an infrared thermometer with the little laser on it, and so whenever I would chill my wort inside, my dog loved to play with the little red light, the little laser pointer. So she was trained when I was chilling the wort that it's time to play with the little red dot. Well, my stupid thermometer broke, and so now I have to look at my heartbroken dog, who just stares at me when I'm chilling my beer, and it's like I don't want to play with her anymore. But anyway, I need a laser pointer. And longest outro ever. Jack Skellington Round Orbs Helium Balloon. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate link on basicbrewing.com. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.